self? What is the negative belief I hold about myself?
Right, baby?
To learn more, we traveled to New York to see a man about a horse, literally.
Horses are very perceptive animals. They can smell and feel stress and fear.
Dr. Yuval Neria runs the Man of War Project at Columbia University and says bringing together horses and PTSD patients makes sense on many levels.
Horses are prey animals, suggesting that they never feel completely safe and secured. They always on guard. And veterans with PTSD or people with PTSD actually suffer from a very similar problem.
92% of the 70-plus veterans who participated in Columbia's EAT Man of War study not only completed the treatment, but many showed improvements in two distinct areas, PTSD and depression, suggesting the treatment could be effective beyond anxiety-based diagnoses. The tricky part? Trauma was never actually discussed.
So it's all about engaging more and more with the horse, with less and less avoidance, less and less of fear.
Neria, a decorated war veteran himself, says often veterans don't thrive in traditional therapy settings and that the drop-off rate is high. It's different, though, on the farm.
They do not feel this treatment as demanding or artificial, so it feels fun, it feels rewarding.
Are you still learning about people?
The horses at Renshaw's Wind of Change farm are rescues, something she says is important, with every being here finding reassurance from the other.
This is a place to be your authentic you. It's a deeply, for lack of a better word, spiritual process, experience, and it's all about the experience.
Amber Strong, Powhatan County, Virginia.
Clear prop.
The view from above shows the stakes for communities on the coast. The lines between us and the water are already thin, and lately, those lines are breaking. The U.S. faces ever stronger storms that destroy homes and lives, exposing just how vulnerable our coastlines and cities really are under the growing impacts of the changing climate. But a new generation of American infrastructure is trying something different, dealing with climate change by accepting climate change. In the Gulf Coast, Louisiana aims to turn the tide of rapid land loss by harnessing the power of water to actually create new land.
It's literally an existential threat to our coastal communities. Will they exist in the future, in 10, 20, 50 years?
And in New York City, an ambitious new project is meant to protect hundreds of thousands of people and a $500 billion business sector.
A lot of the resources that we need to really be able to take proactive action flow quite reactively after a disaster.
To deal with future flooding and sea level rise, New York is creating more urban spaces built to soak up flooding and a new coastal barrier to safeguard the city. These projects are all part of a new idea for dealing with climate threats, that the only way ahead might not be stopping the water, but instead, living with the water.
This is the beginning of what will be a 10-foot wall built into these tiered parks that they have along the east side here.
The Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. It's a 2.4-mile long project that will protect 110,000 people in a community that was really impacted by Hurricane Sandy, 28,000 of whom live in public housing.
How important was Hurricane Sandy in changing how the city thinks about storm preparedness and climate change?
What Hurricane Sandy did was unlock the federal dollars that we needed to really move those plans into action. And that's kind of an unfortunate policy environment we're in. The cities that are furthest ahead on this work are places like New York City and New Orleans that have recently experienced disasters and were able to unlock those federal dollars to build protection and build resiliency.
With both federal and city funding, this project's price tag will run at least $1 billion. Its supporters say it's a worthy investment to protect against far costlier damage. That means protecting against another Sandy, or Ida, or Katrina, deadly storms that punched through levees and old barriers to flooding. Whole cities felt the impacts, but especially those cities' working class and minority neighborhoods, lower lying and with less green space to absorb the water. The storms destroyed homes and upended lives.
The trees are blown down, water rising, power's out. We did not think it would be so bad.
It's terrible for the community here.
The Big U in New York City is a new kind of flood protection, at least new for the U.S. It creates an elevated outline of parks and green space around much of Manhattan to stop storm surge and to soak up flooding. And it borrows a tactic from the Dutch, designating one area to contain flooding with the aim of protecting other areas.
This really represents a new class of infrastructure for New York City. This is part of an essential part of our response to the impacts of climate change. What we've learned from our own experience here in New York City is that every waterfront neighborhood is unique. We have 100 waterfront neighborhoods, and the strategies that we need to use to protect our coastal neighborhoods are probably as diverse as the neighborhoods themselves. Our goal is not to wall ourselves off from the water. We're a waterfront city. We have 520 miles of coastline, but rather integrate flood protection.
What are those things that you see internationally and that you've been able to adopt and maybe tweak a little bit for New York City?
We often get asked, have you learned from what the Dutch have done in the Netherlands? And we have. But what we found is that these kinds of projects have never really been implemented in a dense urban environment like New York City. So they really not only represent a new class of infrastructure for New York City, but maybe one of the first of their kind globally.
This construction site is just the beginning of a grand reimagining of Manhattan's waterfront. The Big U is the master plan, and its master planners come from the Bjarke Ingels Group, an architecture firm based in Denmark and in Dumbo, or Brooklyn. From a ski slope built on a clean energy power plant in Copenhagen to new designs for a floating city in Malaysia, the firm aims to counter climate threats through what it calls social infrastructure.
What was the purpose of the Big U?
The Big U is in reaction to Superstorm Sandy, which of course hit the coast in the fall of 2012. After Hurricane Katrina, the Corps of Engineers came in and just basically decided to build higher levees. This is not just building taller levees or taller concrete walls. It really needed to consider and address this urban condition that is New York. And so we created what we call a social infrastructure. It's this idea that you could create infrastructure, but it has another side benefit that is for the social well-being of its inhabitants. So there are actually areas that are built 2 to 3 blocks inland that have these floodgates, and that allows for both, people to move from one side to the other, but in those times of emergency, you can lock those down, and that entire compartment is protected.
Keeping the water there as opposed to further inland, causing
Exactly.
more flooding.
Humanity has lived with water for millennia. As we become more smart about what water means to us, and we see it as something that is going to start to impact us the same way that a snowstorm impacts us when it gets, winter, we can then decide on where are we going to invest, where are we going to protect, where are we going to retreat, where are we going to store these large amounts of water.
What are the limits of a project like this in addressing those core issues, the flooding,
So
storm
I
surge?
think it's really important never to consider that one project is going to do everything.
Yeah, this is not a total solution.
It's
right?
not a one-stop shop or a solution. Resiliency and water issues, they come from everywhere. They come from the sky down, so all the rain that hits Manhattan needs to be dealt with. I would say there are probably hundreds of projects that all have to work in alignment to really truly have a resilient city. If we look at New York City as, this area has been now built over the last, 3 to 4 centuries, then it's going to probably continue to be a very important urban center for the next centuries. So this is an investment in the future of the city that then future generations will, of course, have to relate to and possibly build on top of, depending on, how things go with sea level rise.
The global challenges of climate change require global solutions. But the coastal communities facing these challenges come in all shapes and sizes, and they're finding their own ways of living with the water. Far from the dense urban coastline of New York, another mindset shift is harnessing the power of water to reclaim the land that's sinking under rising sea levels. No state faces greater coastal risks than Louisiana, where the ocean swallows a football field of land every 30 minutes, and where hurricanes can consume entire islands. To form a defensive ring along its coast, Louisiana is changing course on a century-long effort to control the might of the Mississippi River, instead creating new projects that aim to restore the water's natural flow and feed soil back to rapidly vanishing coastline. To understand how Louisiana's abundant water flow can move soil back out to the areas that need it, state officials turn to a vast laboratory at Louisiana State University, where researchers study the Mississippi River and Louisiana coast by recreating it in miniature.
A lot of these areas used to get fresh water
And because of, man-made, where there was oil and gas, timber, or pressures, those freshwater flows were changed. And so, in kind of major project type in the master plan is trying to reconnect some of that, where you're saying, okay, this is going to turn to open water, can actually be slowed down or stopped if you can just reintroduce fresh water back in the system.
So after decades of kind of constricting the flow of the Mississippi River, now it seems like the focus is these projects that sort of imitate what the natural flows would be, right?
Right, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right. The idea of a lot of them, particularly the river sediment diversions, the hydrologic restoration, et cetera, are about letting the river do what it used to do. Two of the kind of major types of projects for the state's coastal master plan are marsh creation projects and river sediment diversions. Both of those require sand. Okay? And so in particular with the physical model, we're helping the state understand how that sand moves down the river.
So can you tell me a bit about where we're standing right now?
So we're in Barataria Bay, and this is one of the regions in coastal Louisiana that really has been impacted the most by the disconnect of the river from the wetlands, right?
It's been cut off from the
Cut off from the
River.
Mississippi River, right? So this area has, was built, when the Mississippi River was, unleavened or, and was free to kind of flood its banks and deposit water, sediment, nutrients around here.
It was bringing earth to this
It was,
area.
exactly. The other part is kind of the fragile nature of the lowermost Mississippi River. I think that's the other part is this area is subsiding a lot. And when you combine that subsidence with future sea level rise, with the fact that you're not getting a lot of sediment to nourish, water or sediment to nourish those lands, that, in essence, that thread keeps getting thinner and thinner.
For Louisiana, protecting the coastline also means rebuilding the coastline. In some cases, literally building up islands that will protect communities and vital industries. But to get earth and sediment out to the far reaches of the state, Louisiana has to harness the power of the Mississippi River, breaking the river out of the straitjacket of levees it's been kept in for the past century, and embracing the power of water not to destroy land, but to create it. Getting out to the far reaches of this coastal line of defense involves a journey by sea and by land to a barrier island in the making.
As you're walking around out here, you definitely get the sense that this is all fairly recent. It's still a pretty sloppy, muddy foundation, but it's the beginnings of a land recovery effort that will stretch across the Louisiana coastline. Yeah, we're almost basically in the Gulf of Mexico, huh?
Another 100 feet south of here and we would be in the Gulf. What we're doing is we're restoring the beach, dune, and some of the marsh habitat along here.
So this muddy, sloppy earth out here is the base layer, basically.
This is the base layer.
Yeah.
And what we have in a lot of our case in Louisiana, we have a sediment deficit problem. There's subsidence that's going on. We have a delta environment. So our delta is subsiding at the same time sea level is rising. So how do you make up that difference of the land going underwater? In this case, you pump some more sand in this area, you build the elevation back up. This island provides that first line of defense against storms that come for our coastal communities.
It does seem like there's a lot of action on this front in Louisiana. It seems like there's some political willpower behind it. What do you chalk that up to? There's a certain urgency or immediacy to it here that we haven't seen in other parts of the country?
There's a tremendous urgency, and people who live out in the coast and work and play in these areas. You go on a boat ride and you see areas that 5-10 years ago it was marsh, and now it's open land. The map on your GPS might not have been updated, but the landscape has updated, and people see that and they know it, and that's why there's tremendous support behind these projects. Our coastal master plan has been approved unanimously by our legislature. Think about that. That's not a red issue or a blue issue. Everybody understands the importance of restoring our barrier islands and our natural ecosystems, and doing everything we can to protect our communities, particularly as you've seen the land loss crisis that we have in Louisiana that probably nowhere else has had the land loss crisis that we have. So it's literally an existential threat to our coastal communities. Will they exist in the future, in 10, 20, 50 years? These are the types of projects that will make that existence possible in the future.
Living with the Water is the first episode of our new documentary series, In Real Life. And in this first episode, we're looking at infrastructure meant to tackle climate change, flooding, sea level rise in an innovative way. And it's a really urgent issue. There are clearly problems with especially how American cities handle flooding and storm surge. And we've seen that in New York City. We've seen that along the Gulf Coast. It's not just about building higher levees or building higher seawalls. It's about stepping away from this mentality where we have to stop the water and learning to manage the water. And for decades, the Netherlands and really across Northern Europe, there have been these projects that manage water. But it's really important to also recognize that communities have been living with the water for centuries, for millennia. And even currently, there are examples of communities in Cambodia, in Thailand, in Peru, all over the world that have figured out how to live with the water. What this story is about, it's really about how the modern American city is learning from some of those methods and employing them in new ways in cities and coming up with a lot of new, innovative infrastructure to deal with these issues.
Our approach to design is quite holistic. So it's not, there are no buildings actually proposed. It's about terrain, topography, and public realm.
These projects run into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The projects that we looked at specifically in this story and other projects that are of this grand scale. It's a lot of money. In Louisiana, it's a bit of a more unique funding structure because the majority of the funding for these coastal restoration projects in Louisiana has actually come from fines that were levied against BP over the Deepwater Horizon incident. As horrible as that Deepwater Horizon accident was, it has led to the money that was brought in through fines, against BP has led to these projects that are restoring coastline and that are helping Louisiana fight this battle to slow and stop its land loss. The projects that we highlighted in this piece, in part, their focus really is lower income communities and the most vulnerable communities on the coast in those regions.
The city faces up to 30 inches of sea level rise by the 2050s, and that number goes up to 6 feet at the very high-end projections by the end of the century. So this is a real challenge, and we need to act with urgency. Often the people who are most socially and economically vulnerable in our communities are also the most environmentally vulnerable to the impacts of climate change.
In New York City, for example, where they're focused, these are areas of Manhattan that historically, the land has been less desirable and, less expensive and therefore more affordable because it's prone to flooding. And that's been a problem for a long time, for centuries even. And in Louisiana, there are communities all along the coast that are more at risk every year, not just because stronger hurricanes are coming in, but because the strong hurricane that came in the year before or 2 years earlier might have busted through some barrier islands. And so the project that we see in this episode in Louisiana is looking at an effort to build that back up to protect those communities.
I came back from Afghanistan and something was wrong. You kind of have to learn how to rewire your brain in order to be in control of it again.
So you're telling me it's never too late to chase a dream?
TikTok give you that promise. You still can do something in life. You can still make somebody happy.
People say, well, if there's another hurricane. It's not if, it's when.
They want to have an excellent power system from the 20th century. We want an excellent power system from the 21st century.
Where are we in terms of the light pollution that many of us are coming into contact with?
It has gotten worse.
Got a dark sky meter. I barely know how to use this thing.
What else is out there that we may be able to utilize to combat these mosquitoes?
These are folks that were deemed to be of no danger. They weren't just let out of prison. We have called on the president to ensure that none of them go back.
This story has been my story, but what's yours?
Here's your Fox 4 digital update. 2 murder suspects in Lee County plead not guilty in the case where the sheriff says they tried to set up a drug deal, then killed the supplier. The sheriff's office says the victim was Jamari Ali. Now, Cameron Williams and Darian Howard are charged with second-degree murder in Ali's killing. Deputies say this happened back in early May in Lehigh Acres. The sheriff's office says Williams and Howard set up the drug deal with Ali on Dominion Avenue South, shot Ali, then hid his body in the nearby brush and abandoned his car about 8 blocks away. Investigators finally found his remains and the car 5 days later. The 2 are still being held in the Lee County Jail. On Tuesday morning, Governor Ron DeSantis.
It's not our responsibility to provide housing for people.
A strong statement from one of Fort Myers' leaders in charge of the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But the questions some are raising about the program tonight.
Plus, the woman suspected of hitting and injuring an ATV rider and then driving off was finally caught. The chaos Highway Patrol troopers say she caused in Lehigh Acres, running from not 1, but 2 crash scenes.
New and very visible development could be coming to Coconut Point Mall in Estero to keep up with the growth there. Some are excited and some are concerned. As Fox 4 News at 10 starts now.
Live from Southwest Florida, this is Fox 4 News at 10.
Thank you for joining us for Fox 4 News at 10 on this Tuesday night. I'm Nadine Yanis.
I'm Chris Earl. It might not be 97 or 98 degrees right now at this exact moment at 10 o'clock, but if you were outside for any amount of time today, you certainly will not be forgetting the heat anytime soon.
So anytime we're breaking records, we usually lead our newscast with that, and it's almost something that we're seeing almost daily at this point as we bring in certified meteorologist Katie Walls to start off our coverage tonight.
That's right, 15 days so far, setting new record highs. As a matter of fact, Fort Myers, Naples, tying those records today. In Fort Myers, it also tied the hottest day so far of 2023 at 98 degrees. And Punta Gorda, we were just 1 degree off of that record of 98. So as we take a look at that daily record high temperature map, just looking at how many records we have set so far this month, Naples now up to 12 daily record highs, Punta Gorda up to 7, and Fort Myers today, that record made the second of the day. Now let's take a live look outside. You might still be noticing some illumination depending upon your location, especially looking farther inland. So once in a while you might be seeing the sky illuminate, and we're going to spend a second here just to see if the Bayfront end is going to show things off, because we definitely have some storms. There you go. Still lingering, especially for our friends across parts of Collier County. So now let's head into our radar to show you where those storms are still lingering across Collier into Hendry as well as Glades. Some of the more vigorous downpours right here for Naples, extending down toward Lely Resort and even back toward Golden Gate. You can see those areas of very distinct heavy red indicating heavy rainfall, and even back toward Orange Tree, Ave Maria into Harker, though we are seeing some lightning there in that area. We'll talk more about where these storms are headed and when our next round will be developing tomorrow, coming up.
Thank you, Katie. Tonight, the Lee Interfaith for Empowerment organization is talking about issues it's finding with the city of Fort Myers. The group wants more transparency in the city's process to build affordable housing units.
Yeah, our housing crisis is something we cover almost daily here at Fox 4, and this involves reporting exactly how much money is in that fund, what projects are a result of it, and just how long those projects will take. Fox 4's Dominga Murray checks in to see where the city stands and why this organization called Life is so conflicted by this issue.
Here at the New Image Tabernacle Church, members of its congregation are advocating for more affordable housing in the city of Fort Myers. It's a need worsened by Hurricane Ian.
We just feel that it should be a basic right for everyone to have a decent place to live.
Mary Stockton is the pastor at New Image Tabernacle. This is the question she's asking the people she serves each Sunday.
What is it that keeps you awake at night?
The answer is lack of affordable housing.
And resoundingly, that has been the issue.
Rusty May, one concerned member of the congregation, went before the Fort Myers City Council last week to follow up on a process they started in January 2022. It's called the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
And one of the questions was, when can we expect more projects to begin? And when can we expect that there would be people who would have some hope in terms of moving into an apartment that they could afford?
The council agreed when selling certain city-owned properties for part of that profit to go into the fund to use to build affordable housing. Even Mayor Anderson at the time called it a big moment to help what he calls the missing middle. people struggling to find housing. Then he said in June of 2022, this burden is not on city government.
It's not our responsibility to provide housing for people. The responsibility really falls on the individual.
In January of this year, he said his stance has not really changed. Today, the mayor's office said his schedule did not allow time to talk with us about this.
When they say that that's not their responsibility, it is the responsibility of the elected officials to utilize the funds that they have so that policies are made that will impact all of the people, and that includes the poor people as well.
In Fort Myers, Dominga Murray, Fox 4.
Tonight, we're also working to get answers after Fox 4 viewers called us about an internet outage in Cape Coral that's lasting for hours. So we know that the Sandoval Community Association in the Cape sent a message to residents saying a major fiber cable was cut and it's now affecting multiple counties. Provider Lumen has also confirmed with us that they are troubleshooting an outage in Port Charlotte as well. They suspect that could be impacting Cape Coral. So, of course, Fox 4 will keep you updated once we learn more.
Also, traffic alert in downtown Punta Gorda tonight as police say a sinkhole closed down the right lane of West Olympia Avenue near Sullivan Street. As they say, it will take those DOT crews some time to fix this, unsure exactly how long. So they want drivers to find other ways around this, which can be done in downtown Punta Gorda as the crews work to fill the sinkhole.
And the Lee County Sheriff's Office says that they are investigating a death at the Diamond Head Beach Resort on Fort Myers Beach. Deputies say a contracted employee was found unresponsive and pronounced dead on the scene. It is unclear what caused that death at this time.
New this hour, an arrest of the woman whom Florida Highway Patrol troopers say is responsible for 2 crashes in Lehigh Acres back on Sunday. Investigators say 33-year-old Amber Tremblay hit an ATV rider who was trying to make a U-turn on Harvest Avenue Sunday night. Troopers say that she was driving her Dodge Challenger while intoxicated and also with a suspended license. Instead of stopping to help the man, investigators say that Tremblay got away in another car that was involved in a separate crash about a mile away. Tremblay then ran from that second crash, seen in a video running from it in a bikini. Tremblay was finally caught during a traffic stop today where she was a passenger. Meanwhile, that ATV rider is home recovering tonight. Fallen Fort Myers police officer Adam Jobbers Miller shot and killed in the line of duty 5 years ago this week. And although he did not survive, his memory lives on with a 3-day-long blood drive held every year after his death to help save the lives of others. Officer Jobbers Miller's family and Fort Myers police are working with Lee Health to host the 5th annual blood drive. And since the drive started, Lee Health has collected enough blood to help nearly 1,700 patients. And this is all to keep the fallen officer's legacy going after he needed blood that night before passing away days later. The blood drive will be at Lee Memorial tomorrow and then at Fort Myers Police on Thursday, 8 to 4:30 each day. The Coconut Point Mall in Estero wants to expand, bringing in new businesses like a Culver's, a Wawa, a new Cheesecake Factory, generating plenty of excitement tonight.
But that also comes with growing pains and concerns over traffic along busy US 41, as the meeting also talked about bringing a new multifamily development to Estero as well. So these were all topics discussed at that Village of Estero planning meeting. It lasted 5 hours long tonight. Fox 4's Bella Line take us to that meeting and answers just how soon that first Cheesecake Factory in Lee County is close to opening.
I'm Bella Line in Estero, where the Villages of Estero's Planning Board voted on a couple big projects tonight, from a neighborhood pickleball court to new restaurants coming to Coconut Point. We went out and spoke to the public who said they are most excited for the Cheesecake Factory that's coming to town.
Board Member Shealy?
Yes.
Board Member Tatulis?
Yes.
Board Member Wallace?
Yes.
Chairman Wood?
Yes.
And with that unanimous yes, more plans for the new Cheesecake Factory in Estero are approved. With over 40 flavors to choose from, what's your favorite cheesecake flavor?
Key lime. Regular cheesecake is my favorite. I'm gonna have to go with cookie dough because I already like it in my ice cream and everything else. I'm gonna have to go with Oreo because I like it in my ice cream.
Southwest Florida is excited to welcome another Cheesecake Factory.
I think it'll bring a lot of business. I feel like this mall specifically needs some better places lately, so I think that'll be something good for it.
A business that is less than a month away from opening here at the Coconut Point Mall, where the planning board also approved plans for a new Culver's to open up here as well. New development and new businesses to accommodate all the new people moving in to keep up with Southwest Florida's growth. Here at the Cheesecake Factory, the board approved some last-minute changes with the restaurant a month from opening. asking to increase the outdoor patio dining area for more guests.
I'm sure it's going to be very popular, so a lot of people are going to come down to have their cheesecake.
It's going to be closer for everybody, and people are just going to love it.
With it being the only cheesecake factory in Lee County.
It's a new restaurant. Can't be bad.
The meeting went on for several hours as many are excited for this new cheesecake factory to open its doors in less than a month. But some expressed concern with what's an already busy US 41. In Estero, Bella Line, Fox 4.
Personally go with the classic cheesecake. But on this topic tonight, there were also concerns about traffic, as you just heard that Bella say, from residents who live near the Pelican Sound Drive area, as a developer wants to rezone 11 acres on Pelican Sound from commercial to residential. This to make way for an apartment complex that would bring in 219 multifamily apartments. Now, you're getting a look at some of the proposed plans here and conceptual designs. Again, those who live in this neighborhood, though, are already worried about the traffic right there along US 41. This while a new indoor water park is coming to Naples next year. The Great Wolf Lodge announced its biggest resort yet is expected to open in the spring or summer of 2024. So this will have 500 suites and 100,000 square foot water park. Boy, can we use that now. All of this will be next to the Paradise Coast Sports Complex near I-75 and Collier Boulevard. That location will also feature an adventure park, event space, and food for the whole family. It will be the 21st Great Wolf Lodge location in the country and the very first here in the Sunshine State.
And the move for this can come and when you have the youth sports complex, have that right next door. As one who used to be in travel team baseball, that's always where it works for the parents. Yep.
All right, well, coming up, we have new pipes in place here in our Southwest Florida waterways, and all to keep toxic nutrients out of the Caloosahatchee.
Coming up, we show you how the project works to keep the water clean from beneath the Earth's surface.
And we may be in the middle of summer, but we're already thinking about next spring. And no, we're not talking about those cooler temperatures here. We're talking baseball. The schedules are now out for the Minnesota Twins and Tampa Bay Rays. What you need to know.
And we have some lingering showers and storms right now, especially across Collier County. The strongest cell, though, thankfully moving offshore away from Marco Island. Though I'm tracking the storms that we do have on radar coming up for you live next.
As we've been reporting on so many blue-green algae health alerts in Lee County so far this summer, a new project is expected to cut down on these toxic blooms and also keep all of our water clean.
So this is called the Four Corners Rapid Infiltration Project. It opened today in the Caloosahatchee watershed. Fox 4's Ryan Kruger shows us how it all works, and he was there when it started today.
The pipes started flowing shortly before noon on Tuesday. Calling it the Four Corners Rapid Infiltration Project, the main job is to dramatically reduce the amount of toxic nutrients that get into our local waterways.
We're putting it into a separate holding area so it's not going straight into the river, and it's going to be cleaned. And by the time it gets to the river in a couple of years after going underground, it will be clean.
Here's how it works. During the rainy season, the Army Corps of Engineers releases water from Lake Okeechobee. When it comes down the Caloosahatchee River, it often brings phosphorus and nitrogen, which can lead to toxic algae blooms in our canals and at our beaches.
What we're doing is taking dirty water out of the river system, so that water is not going to be impacting the Caloosahatchee, which is really important because right now, as much dirty water as we can keep out of the Caloosahatchee, that's good for all of us.
The South Florida Water Management District says they will be able to remove 1.2 metric tons of phosphorus from our waterways every year. To put that in perspective, that's more than 2,600 pounds, along with more than 39 metric tons of nitrogen.
This ribbon cutting comes while one of the Water Management District's biggest projects, a $500 million storage project, remains in limbo. The district and the contractor now both suing each other in federal court with no timeline on when it will all be finished. Ryan Kruger, Fox 4.
And you just heard the hope is that this project will cut down on those toxic algae blooms like the ones that we've been seeing throughout the summer. Just yesterday, the Florida Department of Health in Lee County issued an alert for blooms that were found at Hancock Creek and Moody Boat Ramp in North Fort Myers. This is all just north of Lofton's Island there. So this means that people in that area should not swim or drink in the water, and of course, keep those pets away as well.
We're also getting a better idea about the spring training season for 2024. Several teams all set to come back to Southwest Florida, starting with the Minnesota Twins, who will be back at the Lee County Sports Complex Hammond Stadium for year 34. The team will play 34 games, 18 of them on the schedule for Hammond Stadium. It all starts February 24th when they play the Golden Gophers of the University of Minnesota. In Charlotte County, the Tampa Bay Rays are also set, hopefully, to return to Port Charlotte for spring training after Hurricane Ian damage forced the Rays to play up near Orlando for this year's spring training. But the Rays, again, will play the rest of the home season this year at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg. But the Charlotte County Sports Park still undergoing some work, all that repair, with the target, according to county leaders, to be set for late February. And they've got 13 home games on the schedule starting February 24th against Atlanta, who of course plays in Northport.
Yeah, now's the time to put on your favorite baseball team's baseball hat because of just how hot it is. The sun has been unbearable. One thing I've noticed, though, we haven't had the typical summer showers that always come at like 2 o'clock every day. The heat is really keeping that down.
It really just depends upon your location.
Yeah.
So further inland, that's where most of those have been, unfortunately. That's why the moderate to severe drought conditions have developed along the coastlines. So we could absolutely use some of that rainfall. And we do have a bit of it right now on radar, especially across parts of Collier, Hendry, extending into Glades. But for coastal Lee, Charlotte, up towards Sarasota, where we do need that rainfall, we just haven't seen much of it as of late. So let's zoom in first down here into Naples and Collier County. We are seeing quite the light show. Let's see if we can take a glimpse of that right now from the Bayfront Inn here in downtown Naples. And we are here looking eastward, but at times you might see the sky illuminate. You also might see the sky illuminate if you look farther off toward the south, just to the south of Marco Island. We're also monitoring a fairly strong thunderstorm as well, producing quite a light show, but thankfully it continues to move away from land. That's actually the strongest cell I'm monitoring, but again, pushing away from Marco Island. But Marco, does look like you're going to be hit by that little storm right now that has now exited Port of the Islands. Then further off toward the north, Naples, you are basically surrounded by those storms right now. So many of us already inside at this point, but you are definitely hearing the sky talk. Same story up to North Naples across Golden Gate. Meanwhile, improvements in terms of how heavy the rain is from Orange Tree to Ave Maria, as well as Immokalee, no longer seeing that very heavy rain, but still A couple of embedded thunderstorms remain. Farther inland up toward Glades as well as Hendry, that consistent rain continues to fall from Palmdale as well as LaBelle. Still a couple of embedded thunderstorms. All of this kind of working its way off toward the west. So Babcock Ranch, Lehigh Acres, you will likely be hit by that round of showers there. And here in the southwestern part of the Cape, now crossing into St. James City, we are watching that little isolated cell, very small, nonetheless still producing a very concentrated pocket of rainfall. Basically exactly where we need it. That's actually a spot that is in severe drought right now. So notice most of that wet weather today farther inland, so staying in inland Collier up through Glades, up through Hendry. That's where we saw most of the activity today, and those are the spots that are in decent shape. Meanwhile, closer to the coast, Fort Myers, we are in deficit by 10.5 inches now. Punta Gorda still down by around 7 inches. Sarasota, Bradenton, no surprise that we have that dark orange there indicating severe drought conditions. We are in deficit there by greater than 14.5 inches. So that's not something typical more than 2 months into rainy season. But when you're talking about the hottest July ever recorded in Southwest Florida, no surprise that we're seeing those evaporation rates a bit higher, helping to dry out our ground even more so. Today, another record-setting day in Fort Myers and Naples. Punta Gorda, we were close, 97 degrees, just 1 degree shy. Above normal temperatures overall will continue. 92 is the normal. Doesn't look like we're going to be hitting that. We might hit it on Thursday, and then we go right back up. So overnight tonight, heading into tomorrow morning, those storms wind down. We'll kick off tomorrow morning with that partly cloudy sky. After 2 p.m., though, do stay weather aware as those showers and storms will be developing. Some much needed rain, not exactly timing out well, though, from 5 p.m. from Arcadia to Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, Fort Myers down to Naples. Just a heads up, we will likely be affected by those showers and storms tomorrow afternoon and evening. Overnight tonight, storms ending, then partly cloudy skies. We'll wake up tomorrow morning up to 78 degrees. Those afternoon highs in the mid-90s, but feeling more like 10 degrees hotter.
All right, Katie, thank you for that update. Well, for so many of us, it's so hard to get access to mental health care and be able to afford it. But now there's a new rule coming out of the White House that could make this all easier for accessing the care a person might need. We're going to explain how this could work, how it will impact you if it passes. Well, tonight, the Biden administration is looking out for your health, proposing a new rule to force insurers to increase coverage for mental health services so you don't have to go out of your network here.
Stephanie Liebergen takes an in-depth look at how the policy could make access to mental health easier for you.
The Biden administration announced a new effort to try to make it easier for Americans across the country to access affordable mental health care. And they're doing this through a new proposed federal rule. And the rule aims at making sure that mental health care is treated the same as physical health care. So there are three main pillars of this new proposed rule. The first one would require health insurance providers to analyze the impact of the mental health care coverage that they offer. What are out-of-network payments look like? How often is prior authorization required? And then making sure that what they offer on the mental health side and the requirements there are the same as what they offer on the physical health side. If they're not the same, insurance companies are going to have to make changes to bring that mental health coverage up to an equal playing field. The second pillar of this is making sure that out-of-network payments that healthcare providers pay out are equivalent on the mental health and the physical health side. Think about things like co-pays and deductibles and out-of-pocket maxes. Again, just making sure that mental health and physical health are treated the same way by health insurance companies. Then the third element of this proposed rule makes sure that non-federal government health plans also comply with this mental health parity. Previously, non-federal government plans, so think like local and state governments, previously they were able to opt out. If this new rule goes into effect, they would not be able to opt out anymore. Really, what the Biden administration is trying to do here is give Americans more choices of in-network providers to allow Americans to stay in-network, have more affordable access to mental health and substance abuse care, instead of having to go out of network or instead of having to go to a provider who doesn't accept insurance at all. Really, the Biden administration continuing their effort on mental health care, which has been a big focus here on Capitol Hill as well, making sure access to mental health care and physical health care are treated equally. Stephanie Liebergen, Scripps News, Washington.
The school bus, often seen as the safest form of transportation to get a student to school. But still ahead, how cases of school bus deaths for students who live with special needs are shining a light on the call to ensure more steps for more safety.
Plus, after a seismic shift on the Collier County School Board last fall, the new superintendent is talking about her first day of school in a couple of weeks.
One Florida father is sounding the alarm over school bus safety tonight as a new academic year is now just weeks away.
It's happened before and it's going to happen again if something doesn't change.
The changes he wants to see to ensure that children who live with disabilities get looked after. As Fox 4 News at 10 continues.
Live from Southwest Florida, this is Fox 4 News at 10.
With just a couple of weeks left until the new school year, the death of a 6-year-old New Jersey girl is also renewing calls for improved school bus safety for all the children who live with special needs all across the country.
JJ Burton with our Scripps station WFTS in Tampa actually spoke with a Hillsborough County father who lost his own daughter because of the exact same issue. And he tells us the changes that he's now looking to make.
This is a picture of a father and his best friend, his daughter. Sadly, she died at just 14 years old.
It's an instant pain.
Teresa Joy Gutney was born with cerebral palsy, wheelchair-bound and nonverbal. She had 57 surgeries, but she died on a Polk County school bus in 2018.
Will always be the worst day of my life.
David Gutney says his daughter's wheelchair was strapped in and she had her seatbelt on, but her head fell back and she was pinned. He says she suffocated to death. According to reports, the monitor was sitting in front of her and didn't notice her until it was too late. Unfortunately, this has happened to other children like Teresa. The latest happened just last week in New Jersey to a 6-year-old girl. That's why David is speaking out again.
It's continuing to happen, and I've stated this on other news interviews in the past that it's happened before and it's going to happen again if something doesn't change.
David and Teresa's mother, Denise Williams, sued the district and won. However, they say money will never be enough. And they pushed for Florida to pass the Teresa Joy Act, which officially started in 2020. It requires that all school bus drivers and aides be given written instructions about any special conditions or non-medical care that students may need while on a school bus, and must all be CPR and first aid trained.
It needs to go further. It needs to go nationwide, and it needs... You can't put your most vulnerable child in the back of a school bus. That's the roughest place to ride on a bus. I work on school buses, I know.
He's also pushing for the Teresa Joy Act to be implemented on a national level, and he wants tougher punishment for school districts, bus drivers, and bus monitors when a child dies like his daughter did.
It's got to stop. It's got to stop.
That was JJ Burton reporting. Well, students across Southwest Florida will be back in class in about 2 weeks. And for those in Collier County, they'll be starting the new school year with a new superintendent, Dr. Leslie Riccadelli. In December, the school board named Riccadelli interim superintendent and officially voted her in as superintendent in May. Before her first term, Riccadelli spoke with school staff and administrators about her goals for the year. And one thing she's grappling with is new controversial state standards for African American history courses.
At the end of the day, our teachers, whatever subject they teach the standards that the state has given us. So, and they don't teach outside of those standards. There's not enough time to teach outside of those standards.
Yeah, a lot to tackle when school in Collier County starts on August 10th.
The legal challenge against Florida's ban on minors at adult live performances, including drag shows, will not go to trial until next spring. That's according to a recent federal court filing in Tallahassee. The new law bans children from attending the performances. Any venue that violates the law could face fines or lose a liquor license. The Hamburger Mary's restaurant owner in Orlando, where they host regular drag shows, brought the lawsuit, and they contend the policy violates the First Amendment. The recent court filing shows a trial over this law is set to start in June of next year. It'll last 2 days. This will be a bench trial, so the verdict will come from the judge, not the jury. And for now, the law is on hold. 4 people in Florida filed a motion in federal court claiming a new state law puts what they call unjustified restrictions on medically necessary health care for transgender adults. Senate Bill 254 passed, restricting gender-affirming care, and the doctors who go around the new law could face a first-degree misdemeanor. Numerous medical organizations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization, support gender-affirming care.
Well, Collier County Marine is dead, found with 2 other Marines inside a car in North Carolina today. The Pender County Sheriff's Office says that deputies found their bodies inside a car at a gas station Sunday morning. The Marine Corps says the 3 men were from nearby Camp Lejeune. All 3 of them held the rank of Lance Corporal. The Corps says one of the victims was 23-year-old Ivan Garcia from Naples. Autopsy results are pending, but the office says investigators don't suspect foul play at this time. Well, the state Supreme Court has publicly reprimanded Elizabeth Scherer. She is the judge who oversaw the Parkland High School shooter Nicholas Cruz's death penalty trial. That 6-month trial ended with Cruz getting a life sentence for murdering 14 students and 3 staff at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School after the jury could not unanimously agree on the death sentence. The state commission found that Scherer chastised the lead public defender and her team and then improperly hugged members of the prosecution in the courtroom after that trial was over. As for Scherer, she's already resigned from her position as a circuit court judge. That position will end at the end of last month, and she has not commented on that reprimand from the state Supreme Court today.
Governor Ron DeSantis, as well as his presidential campaign staff, involved in a minor crash this morning on his way to a campaign event in Tennessee. No serious injuries from this. His press secretary said the DeSantis motorcade was going to Chattanooga for a fundraiser. Police say 4 vehicles in that motorcade were involved. They say the crash happened when traffic slowed suddenly during the morning rush hour traffic on I-75. It's a very hilly terrain there in Chattanooga. The first car hit the brakes. And while the first car didn't hit anyone, it was the cars behind it that started that chain reaction. You see it here on the right side on the shoulder.
This while just 2 months after entering the race, the DeSantis campaign has already had to cut additional staff to balance their spending. His team announced today they had to let go 38 total staff members just in recent weeks. According to campaign filings, that's more than a third of his staff. The DeSantis campaign raised more than $20 million in the first 6 weeks of the race, but then quickly spent $8 million of those dollars. And all of that according to federal findings.
And no changes from the polling for the Republican field. Former President Donald Trump keeping that sizable lead over the rest of the 2024 Republican field. It's a national poll from Monmouth University, and this has registered voters who are Republicans or Republican-leaning. 46% in the polls say Trump would be the candidate they'd like to see as a nominee. 20% backing Governor DeSantis, and about 45%, so less than half of those polled, also said the former president would be the strongest Republican to run against President Biden in November of 2024.
Well, more than 43 million people in the United States have student loans, and in just over a month, the federal loan repayment system will start again after being paused since the start of the pandemic.
But what will that mean for the borrowers? Chris Conte shows us why so many people are worried now about their finances.
I've spent a lot of time recently talking to Americans who are carrying student loan debt, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And many of them are not who you might expect. There are other places Patricia Cummings would rather be in the middle of summer, and yet here she is, teaching at summer school just to make ends meet.
For not only myself, but for teachers in general, you will hear a number of teachers, say, we have more than one job.
Of all the reasons she got into teaching, money was not one of them.
Oh, not because of the money, not at all. We make absolutely nothing. No, not because of the money, not at all.
Cummings is a special education teacher outside of Baltimore. She is 60 years old and has $180,000 in student loan debt from her doctoral program.
It's awful. Like, you shouldn't have to decide whether you should pay a student loan or if you should keep a roof over your head.
At the moment, Cummings' federal student loans are on hold, but that will change at the end of August after President Biden agreed to restart payments during debt ceiling negotiations. Worry has already set in for Patricia Cummings.
So I'll have to cut back on a lot of things. Like, I will definitely pay my mortgage first, but I'll have to cut back on my grocery bill.
The Department of Education estimates 43 million people in this country owe a collective $1.6 trillion in federal student loan debt. On average, borrowers have around $37,000 in debt. Many haven't made a monthly payment since March of 2020, when President Trump paused payments, and are worried about their finances when payments come due at the end of August.
I just can't breathe easy and say, I'm done.
Susan Vincent is among those concerned about her finances when repayments restart. The 78-year-old retired science teacher owes $30,000 in federal student loans.
What is it like knowing that you might die with these student loans, not paid?
The way I look at it, if I die owing money, oh well. I mean, I like to pay my bills, but This is not fair.
Vincent owes so much money that she's come out of retirement this summer to substitute teach in New York City, just to make enough money to get by when her payments begin again.
What is so unfair about it is that I did, in fact, do my civic duty and teach in a high need area, and I'm still tutoring and substituting. And there ought to be some loan forgiveness for that.
Vincent told me she's still upset about the Supreme Court's ruling that overturned President Biden's efforts to forgive some student loan debt, a case brought by Republican states which argued the forgiveness was outside of his powers. Opponents to waiving the debt say it's too expensive and unfair to people who have paid off education loans or never received them. Vincent, though, is hopeful something might change before repayments restart.
It's the injustice of it, Chris, that just gets to me. People in my income bracket are struggling to put food on the table.
I'm not saying that they have to forgive the entire loan, but I do think that they should take into consideration each individual's situation.
For now, teachers like Patricia Cummings will keep working extra hours and extra jobs, all in hopes of keeping up with her student loan payments. Chris Conti, Scripps News, Baltimore.
Well, none of us can really avoid that heat the moment we step outside these days.
And coming up, the concern about people who battle homelessness, who do not have a place to escape all this heat, and they're trying to stay safe. Plus, for people who can swim, they might think about how easy it can be, but for those who cannot, we'll look at the need for a day like today, World Drowning Prevention Day.
And if you're outside, you look southward, you see a lot of lightning. Likely these storms right here, just off the coast of Marco Island, as well as 10,000 Islands in southern Collier County. We're tracking these storms and when our next round will be developing heading into tomorrow.
As we all track the heat and endure it at all times, it seems, some cities in Florida are also seeing more people enduring homelessness, trying to find shelter inside.
So Jessica DeLeon with our Scripps station, WFTX in Tampa, shows us how residents living on the streets in Bradenton are trying to stay cool.
Staying hydrated and hibernating in the air conditioning allows most of us to beat the heat. But that's not a luxury people living on the streets can rely on.
I go shop and I try to stay cool, library, do things like that.
Try to ride the bus, you know, sometimes to cool off a little bit, go different places. It's the only way to stay cool out here unless you get water. And I usually just pour it all over me and just...
The heat has more people flocking into the Salvation Army in Bradenton.
Been maxed out in regards to overnight stays for our emergency shelter. We've had more people having ambulances come because of the overheating themselves and having to be taken to the hospitals.
This year is well on its way to being one of the hottest years on record in Florida.
Venice, Bradenton, Sarasota, Ruskin, Lakeland, Orlando, and Fort Myers are all having their their hottest start ever to a calendar year.
It's so hot that the Salvation Army has been putting out a water jug every day.
Many of them are coming in looking like they're on their last bit of hope.
Manatee County's population has grown 20% over the past decade, but Major Tom Richmond tells me services are not being expanded quick enough to keep pace with that growth.
We need the village to help us take care of the village.
Want to help? Monetary donations are always needed, but the Salvation Army says donations of water, electrolyte drinks such as Gatorade, sunblock, umbrellas, rain ponchos, and easy-to-open non-perishable food are best.
And another look at that heat. Hopefully none of us will sweat while we're talking about this. A new study that says climate change is why we're seeing these July heat waves across America, China, and also Europe. Researchers say the increase in heat-trapping gases, largely from the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas, has made China's heat wave even more deadly. China posted an all-time high of 126 degrees earlier this month. Europe running nearly 5 degrees hotter than average, like the U.S., Mexico nearly 4 degrees warmer than a typical summer.
Yeah, and if you head out to the pool, a reminder today is actually recognized as National Drowning Prevention Day. And according to NCH, drowning is the leading cause of death in children ages 1 through 4 years old here in Florida. NCH is reminding our community tonight of just a few water safety tips. Supervise, never take your eyes off your children in and around water. Use barriers, have fences, self-closing gates, or secured doors with alarms. Learn how to swim and how to respond. Get training in basic water rescue skills and have rescue equipment nearby, and of course a phone by the pool as well.
And also a reminder, it's down at Marco on Saturday, being Collier County. You could see the life jacket pools out there. They were all taken.
Yeah.
Hopefully all got returned within due time, I hope. But again, a reminder about the importance of this to have all of us stay safe out in the water.
Because so many people are trying to stay cool these days, as we bring in certified meteorologist Katie Walls once again talking about that heat. And boy, these records aren't going to stop.
That's right. Another day of record-setting temperatures today. Fort Myers and Naples tied those records. Punta Gorda, we were just 1 degree shy. That record in Punta Gorda will stand at 98. We only hit 97 there. Of course, it felt much hotter across the board because of the humidity. That peak heat index climbed to 108 degrees in Punta Gorda as well as Fort Myers. Naples also recorded a heat index of 110. Let's take a live look outside right now. It's definitely a muggy, soupy night. We continue to see that cloud cover, and once in a while you might be noticing the sky illuminate, especially if you're looking farther off toward the south. So if you look off toward the south, you might be seeing quite the light show, especially if you are in Collier County, for example. That's where those more vigorous storms are right now, just off of Marco Island as well as 10,000 Islands, but moving away from land. That's where the concentration of lightning currently is. But for Marco Island itself, notice just some of those light remnant rain showers. It's farther offshore that we currently have that thunderstorm intact. Everglades City, same story. we're mainly just seeing light to moderate rain falling there, but farther off toward the south, that's where most of the action really is. And then farther up toward the north here, across parts of Collier County, we continue to monitor these storms winding down, but still producing light to moderate rainfall from Orange Tree, Ave Maria, up through Immokalee, right along 29, heading up to Felda, LaBelle. Just consistent moderate rain falling, now extending back toward Lehigh Acres, as well as parts of Babcock Ranch. And across Glades County, again, that consistent rain falling from Palmdale, stretching up toward the Venus area into parts of Highlands. Otherwise, we are monitoring this little shower here, fizzling out now over North Captiva, as well as Captiva, extending down to Blind Pass, but not seeing any lightning out of that. So these showers, these storms continuing to wind down after midnight. Overnight, still partly cloudy skies are forecast. That's how we'll kick off tomorrow morning, and it's going to be another muggy start. Upper 70s, close to 80 degrees. Typically this time of year, we should be waking up to lows in the mid 70s, but that just hasn't been the case because of this deep tropical air mass that we have overhead that's preventing our temperatures from dropping closer to where they should be. Looking ahead to tomorrow afternoon after 2 p.m., keep your eye to the sky for developing showers and storms. And right here at 5 o'clock, the latest model really indicating some much needed rainfall, but of course not timing out well at all, considering where it's going to be hitting along some of our main arteries tomorrow afternoon, right along 5. Arcadia, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, Fort Myers, down through Naples. Really our coastal communities that are under that moderate to severe drought is where we have the best chance of picking up some rainfall tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. Those storms then winding down shortly after sunset. Quick check on the tropics. 3 waves of energy, actually now 4, but thankfully all of them just holding a 10% chance of further development. So this wave here to the south of Bermuda, 10% chance as it works its way off toward the northwest. This one rolling off the coast of Africa, just a 20% chance of further formation. So overnight tonight, clouds partially clearing. We'll call for a partly cloudy sky tomorrow morning as we start off at 78. Afternoon temperatures up to 96, but feeling about 10 degrees hotter because of that humidity.
Well, still ahead on Fox 4 News at 11.
The call for more transparency on the Affordable Housing Fund set up in early 2022 in Fort Myers and the progress that it's making. That story's ahead.